Who doesn't love a good knockout? We all do, and as fans of MMA, we're no strangers to the fact that there are some great knockouts in this sport. The best thing about a knockout is that it can turn a fight the other way in the blink of an eye. There goes one punch and everything's changed. And that's exactly what we're bringing to you in this list that we've put together. First off, Pedro Rizzo vs. Josh Barnett. We all know Rizzo was 11-1 in MMA and was going up against a very youthful Barnett. He was famous for his brutal leg kicks and stand-up skills, but despite every expert move that he has had, his opponent remained undefeated. It was going to be one of the best fights ever in the history of the UFC before the Brazilian finished off the 23-year-old young guy in the second round, and all it took was just one punch. This was the knockout that got Pedro a shot for the title against Randy Couture. Then he lost a controversial undivided decision over the 5 rounds of back-and-forth action. Next up, Matt Hughes vs. Carlos Newton. Do you ever wonder why Hughes was known for his slams? This fight is the reason why. And of course, how could it go without any controversy? The welterweight champion knocked himself unconscious for a small moment after bouncing Carlos Newton's head off the canvas from the top of the cage at UFC 34. After this though, Hughes went on to defend his title 5 more times before he lost to BJ Penn. More on this, Quinton Jackson vs. Wanderlei Silva. Jackson was going to face a defeat against Forrest Griffin in a title match for his light heavyweight belt, and he was going to get a chance to get back at UFC 92 against his biggest rival, Silva. Wanderlei owned 2 wins over Jackson before their third and final fight. Everyone was pretty excited about the whole thing, but what happened was quite unexpected. The 3rd minute in round 1, he connected with a left hook that put the Brazilian legend to sleep. That's something we hadn't seen coming. Speaking of, Pete Williams vs. Mark Coleman. When we talk about something we didn't see coming, we have Mark the Hammer Coleman, who's the father of ground and pound. He was a 2-time winner of the UFC tournament and a former UFC heavyweight champion. He lost the title to Maurice Smith before he took on Williams, and then 12 minutes into round 1, Coleman's cardio got the best of him yet again, and of course, like any other good rival, Pete took advantage of that with a head kick that threw him out against the cage. We also have Rashad Evans vs. Chuck Liddell. Okay, this is the one that no one saw coming. This was supposed to be the fight that set up a fight between Chuck Liddell and the light heavyweight champion Forrest Griffin. But Evans didn't let that happen at all. He put an end to the bout in the second round when he landed a right hand that put the Iceman to sleep. And this wasn't something new for the former light heavyweight champion either. It was actually the first of 3 consecutive knockout losses for him. There's also Rashad Evans vs. Sean Salmon. The Ultimate Fighter winner Rashad Evans hadn't thrown many, if any, head kicks in his career, but the one that he did at UFC Fight Night 8 was what everyone would remember the most. And it wasn't without a little trouble from Sean Salmon, who was a reliable wrestler. He also gave Evans problems early on. It was the first of many impressive knockouts in his career, but also the first of many disturbing knockouts for Sean. Moving on, Quinton Jackson vs. Chuck Liddell. He'd done it 4 years earlier too. But Quinton Jackson was going to do it again against one of the most dominant light heavyweight champions of all time. Liddell went on to win 7-0 since his first loss against Jackson at Pride Final Conflict in 2003, which also included 4 title defenses. The other didn't waste any time in knocking Chuck out when he was coming in with a 26-6 1 minute into the first round. Coming up, Vitor Belfort vs. Wanderlei Silva. The young 21-year-old Brazilian named Vitor Belfort made his mark in the UFC with his incredible win early on in his career, and that was also in just 44 seconds. He'd previously fought Randy Couture, Tank Abbott, and Tra Teligman, but this was gonna be that bout that fans always recall as one of his best knockouts. Why? Oh, come on. It was because his opponent was the scary shootbox fighter, the axe murderer, Wanderlei Silva. Let's get on to James Irvin vs. Terry Martin. Well, there was gonna be at least one flying knee knockout in this list, right? You didn't think we weren't gonna have this. And this one that we have belongs to James Irvin, who used it to knock out Terry Martin at UFC 54. It's also the best one, and that's why we couldn't miss out on it. But there are some other good ones like Spencer Fisher vs. Matt Wyman and Fred Paixão vs. Pablo Garza. In Irvin vs. Martin 1, the referee waved both the fighters in for the second round. And of course, Irvin met Martin in the middle, but it wasn't with his fists. You know what's coming. He threw a flying knee that put Martin out instantly. Here we go with Anderson Silva versus Rich Franklin. This is one of the two more memorable knockouts for pound king Anderson Silva against one of the greatest middleweight champions, Rich Franklin. The first one was for the middleweight championship that Franklin had defended multiple times. And Silva had come off a first-round knockout victory over Chris Leben, and after a small feeling out session, Anderson got Franklin against the cage and had him in his grasp, the classic Muay Thai clinch. That was when he started to deliver knee after knee to the guy, which of course broke his nose in the process. The nose getting all the heat was also fortunate for Rich because it could have been so much worse. Next up, Mauricio Shogun Rua versus Lyoto Machida. Their first fight, if you remember, was nothing but a huge chunk of controversy. After 5 rounds of back and forth, the mixed martial artist Action saw Lyoto Machida take an undisputed decision and extend his unbeaten record. There was a rematch quickly after that for UFC 113 in Montreal, Canada, and Rua came out with a pretty different game plan that consisted of attacking with the hands instead of his kicks. Yep, we were all pretty shocked too. Wasn't Rua known for his kicks? What's with all the hands all of a sudden? But it actually paid off, and he knocked Machida out halfway through the first round. The list also has Gary Goodridge versus Paul Herrera. This fight is one of the most unique ones in MMA. The 12-second knockout had Gary Goodridge make his debut against Paul Herrera, and Gary didn't take much time in destroying his opponent with an elbow attack that's going to go down in history as one of the best. Of course, Goodridge made it past the semifinals of UFC 8 tournament. Even though he made it to that, he was still submitted by Don Fry in the finals. Now, Nick Diaz versus Robbie Lawler. Fans weren't expecting a vicious knockout from Lawler when Nick Diaz and him faced each other at UFC 47. But it did happen, and boy oh boy did everyone enjoy it. Robbie was the golden child of UFC at the time, and Nick was nothing more than a small fighter. But he chased Lawler across the cage and kept taunting him all along the way. Sure, he did try to reply in the same manner, but Diaz was able to get past them. In the second round, the newbie kicked up the taunting and made the golden boy even angrier. Lawler attempted to answer back with some looping punches, but Diaz was able to evade them. Then Lawler made a fatal mistake and missed with a looping hook that allowed his rival to land a solid punch that had the fighter drop down splat on the ground. No one, we repeat, no one was expecting that. Last of all, Tai Tuivasa versus Derek Lewis. Both those heavyweights are known for their shattering knockout power and ability to put their adversaries to sleep. We all wanted to see what was going to come from this, and it produced fireworks. Derek Lewis clearly won the first round after he landed very powerful punches. They were so good that they would have taken down any average fighter, but his opponent was anything but average. Even though Lewis took down Tuivasa with a beautiful outside trip, as soon as the second round started, Tai gained the upper hand. His ruthless pressure forced Derek into the fence, and when the Black Beast was against the cage, Bam Bam came in with his thunderous elbow and ended the fight. That must have hurt. That's it from our side for today. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you have any questions or thoughts about the top knockouts in UFC history that shocked the fans, let us know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.